inspired you to create All Things Dotty, and how did you come up with the name?
Well, there's a couple of things really. So, Mum, like a painting, it had a lion and a lioness looking at each other. I was just like, it's a shame I can't see it. So, one day I'll draw that. Well, actually, there's so many visually impaired people in the UK that can't see how it would look. Nobody would know what an elephant looks like, what a giraffe looks like. I just thought, well, I need to change that. Bringing objects to life for visually impaired people, and it's dotty. 6 Braille dots, so All Things Dotty. Everybody's in the same situation. Every visually impaired person is in the same situation. Can't read their own birthday cards. We need to be able to do that as well. We need to be able to provide personalised cards to visually impaired people, their families, and actually businesses that might serve them.
So is it fair to say then it started off with wanting to do pictorial representations of things that perhaps visually impaired people wouldn't know what they look like a giraffe, like a lion. And then it moved from there onto cards and things like that?
Yeah, I'd definitely say so, yeah. Before I started this, Pizza Hut was the only restaurant that had a Braille menu in the whole of the UK.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question is, can you explain how Braille works and why it is important for individuals who are blind or visually impaired?
Braille is made up of 6 dots. With those 6 dots, different combinations create different letters. For example, A is dot 1, B is dots 1 and 2, C is dots 1 and 4, and D is dots 1, 4, and 5. With these different combinations, you create different letters and different contractions, and once they've all been put together, it creates a word. So we sort of read Braille with our fingers. Sighted people who know Braille can read it with their eyes, but there's at least 4, possibly 5 million people in the UK with a visual impairment. And that could range from people who use large print right the way down to people who use Braille. There's a large percentage of that 4 or 5 million people that use Braille. Reading a menu is very different to listening to a menu. Everybody loves reading. Everybody should have the right to read, public information, books. It's a human right. And if you can't read it, if it's not available, it's quite demeaning for people to have little bits of whatever it is they're reading read out to them, just because they can't read it themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. How has your personal experience influenced the way that you run your business?
I mean, I'm blind myself, so I know exactly how it feels. That's the biggest one. I know how it feels to not know what things look like. I run my business for visually impaired people. Everything's accessible. Everything is sort of personal, because the personal touch can be really important. And everything I do has a quick turnaround, because it could be somebody's birthday sort of in 4 or 5 days' time.
Visiting your website as well, I was struck by how accessible it is, not just in the format that it's presented in, but also in the way it's written.
Yeah.
It's really clear, it's really concise, it's really easy to digest. So you've done a brilliant job with it.
Good, thank you. That means a lot actually, because that website was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Can you share a special experience or memory that you've had since starting All Things Dotty?
Okay, yeah, we got a few here. The most recent one was when Lord David Blunkett called me out of the blue at 5 to 6 on a Friday evening. So I think I sent him an email, gave him a call, and just said, if you've got any contacts that could help, that'd be really useful. And I wasn't expecting a reply, because I know how busy he is. Yeah. And then I was just sat in the garden with Mum. I got a phone call, and it's like an unknown number. So he's given me his personal number, and he said, right, Brandon, how can I help?
Amazing.
So I had like a half-hour, 40-minute conversation with Lord Blunkett, and he gave me all this advice and information. And since then, I've been giving him regular updates, and he's been giving me advice just by email. Yeah, so that's pretty special. Another big one was when I was interviewed for ITV West Country. They filmed me ordering my own food for the first time, using the Braille menu that I'd done for them. I mean, it was a really, really good piece. I mean, even though I started during lockdown, it didn't really take off until I started doing Braille menus. First time I did a Braille menu, when they said yes, I was buzzing, because I actually had something worthwhile to do. I was going to help a business, and that business would help visually impaired people, and I was just like, this is amazing.
What are your plans for the future growth of All Things Dotty?
Well, so we've got a few different ideas in mind. The biggest one is the menus.
Yeah.
What I'm hoping to do is expand that, basically persuade restaurant chains to take the plunge and get these Braille menus in. I'm also thinking, like I say, of creating colouring books. Hopefully get them into the card shop as well, the greetings cards, and get it national.
Definitely.
And you'd be surprised actually as to how many restaurants don't have large print even.
Is there one message or assumption that you would like to change among people who are not visually impaired? If so, what is it and why?
It's a pretty big one. Visually impaired people are people. There is nothing wrong with us. The disability isn't a disability as long as you can learn to live with it, which most people can. We deserve equal rights. And actually, even though you think you might be being helpful by reading the menu or by pulling you across the road, it can sometimes be a bit patronising. So, just ask before you do, for one thing. Mm-hmm. Make sure you provide any help you possibly can if you are in the services industry. And if you meet somebody in the street, just ask before you do.